All right, welcome back to part two of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. X and KB coming at you as we always do. Thank you to everybody who's watching us on YouTube. Thank you to everybody who's listening to us on podcast platforms, however you get your podcast. We talked to you about the AFC East in part one. Now it's time to talk about the decorative NFC East division. And I say that because every single team in this division has done something that not every other single division in the NFL can say that they've done, KB. They've all won at least one Super Bowl. And in some case, well, in every case, actually, two. All four of these teams have won at least two Super Bowls, some more recently than others, but it doesn't take away the fact that it has happened. But the one who hasn't won one recently, at least one of those teams who hasn't, that would be the Dallas Cowboys. They are in a drought of 30 years now, officially. They have not won a Super Bowl since the 1995 season. Can they break it this year? We'll see. One thing that we do now know is that George Pickens will be playing on the franchise tag this year. CeeDee Lamb is healthy and ready to go. They made the trade for Rashawn Gary from the Green Bay Packers, excuse me. I think that's an underrated move people aren't necessarily talking about. You get a full year now of Quinnen Williams, and don't let me forget them being able to draft Caleb Downs. And I think that's a superstar waiting to happen.
Man, listen, it was people that said when they picked up Caleb Downs in the draft, a lot of people out there were saying Caleb Downs was the best player in this draft. It was a lot of people. You even had NFL ready, you even had NFL stars saying Caleb Downs is that guy. From the guys that have seen them work out together, from the guys that have just seen them play in college. He looked like he was NFL ready last year, let alone coming into this year. He looks like he's gonna be that splash player that they needed, whether he's playing safety or if they bring him up in nickel situations. Caleb Downs to me has like best player in his draft class talent. I think that when he was with Ohio State, it was even with Marvin Harrison Jr., like Caleb Downs to me was the best player on that team. And we're just talking overall. I think Caleb Downs is going to make that team hell on earth to deal with on defense. I think also you think about the addition of D Winters, you think about the addition of Rashawn Gary. Both of those players are going to help them. Quentin Williams is going to have a full year, like you said with the Dallas Cowboys. So it is going to be a lot that's going to happen that they can be excited about on defense. For offense wise, the biggest thing was George Pickens coming back. Now that he's going to be playing on a franchise tag, he still has, like you said, CD Lamb. You still have Javonte Williams in the backfield. So I look at it like this is a put up or shut up year for Dak because for me personally, he has a lot of talent. He himself is talented. He has a lot of talent around him because he actually has two legit threats at wide receiver. Still has Ferguson at tight end. You have talent surrounding you. So now it is going to be a point of emphasis that you are needing to get it done. You've seen that, one team in your division has already went through a transition. Another team in your division has went through a major transition, and they've also made like good draft picks and, made good free agency pickups. So you're seeing everything that's happening around you. You got to catch up to speed. This is why I say like the Cowboys are going to continue to get clowned on for the fact that they're not able to get it done when they have superstar talent around them. And, CD Lamb, he has to be better this year. I think that it was at times where people were even questioning whether who's the number one guy. Is it really CD or is it George Pickens? And at times it definitely looked like George Pickens last year. And I think that him being alongside CD helped a lot with that. But it's going to be a put up or shut up year for Dak, for me personally, because I need to see it. And I need to see it on a more consistent level. We talked about this with Jordan Love. I say the same thing with Dak Prescott. You got to be more consistent because you are a veteran quarterback at this point. I can't keep hearing the excuses for why we can't get it done because this is one of those teams where I look at like they're talented enough to go on runs. They just somehow, for whatever reason, can't get it done. And so it's got to be one of those things you got to win your division first off, before we can even start talking about long term, you got to win the East. And the East this year is going to be a gauntlet to me. It's going to be a gauntlet because I feel like a lot of teams, pretty much every team got better to me. I think that whether they got significantly better, that's a whole different story. But I feel like everybody improved. I think that, the Eagles got better. They did get better by a subtraction type of deal because it helped clear their locker room of certain things. But I think that,
Possibly in addition to though, and we'll talk about that when it's time to
yes.
talk about the
Yes,
Eagles.
sir. Yes, sir. And so I think that, Washington is still they're still making strides as a young team. You got Jaden Daniels coming back. So it's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. You know about the John Harbaugh thing going on up in New York. But it's a lot of pieces that are happening to the point where the Cowboys are going to have to catch up to speed because they can't afford to fall down in this division because I think it is going to be a tough division to win. I do.
Malachi Lawrence, the defensive end from UCF. I'm smiling right now because KB, I'm telling you, I think he's going to be hell on earth for defenses or well opposing offensive lines to have to deal with. I got a chance to see him play up close and personal in the 2024 season when Colorado played against UCF, and that's the game I had a chance to see Shedeur and Travis come down here and do their thing too. That brother's special, man. And what I really love the most about the Dallas Cowboys is they got flexibility going forward by a subtraction they made last year when they traded Micah Parsons. And we talked about this to actually kick off this podcast when we first launched a little less than a year ago. And I told you, I said, I think the Cowboys are the long-term winners of this trade. They did not strap themselves to this. They still got good draft capital going forward beyond that. I'm really excited for this team. Am I excited enough to say that they're going to win the division? We're going to have to wait and see on that. I am with you, though, when you say it's a put up or shut up year for Dak Prescott. And what we mean by that, honestly, folks, is not only can they get back to the postseason, but can they get to the postseason and actually make some real noise? Because in Dak Prescott's career, he's only got 2 victories in the playoffs. So we're waiting to see if that can happen. But I do want to ask you this, though. Do you think that the Cowboys even have the guy in house right now that you would say is their long-term option at head coach?
No, I said that when that hiring was made, I said that's not the long-term head coach. I think that that's just the head coach that can help. I mean, we always know that this is Jerry's team, that Jerry is going to get all the attention. I think that this is just a guy that Jerry Jones knew that he can get to, put his messages, put his vision out there for him. And I think that the reason why Mike McCarthy is no longer here is because that message was getting skewed by the time it got from Jerry to Mike McCarthy to the team. I think that this is not the long. I don't think Schottenheimer is the long-term solution for them at head coach. And I think that, like you said, this is a put up or shut up year for Dak. And I mean, like you said, I just want to see if they can do it when it matters. I mean, winning a few games in October sounds great, but we know that the Dallas Cowboys have fans worldwide. This is one of the most famous franchises amongst all major sports. And so I don't think that they're content with just being good. I think that they need to be great this year because it was a couple of times where I looked at them and I said, wow, this team could be really special. And then there was times I looked at them and said, this team still has a long way to go. I think that they made strides, like I said, on the defensive side of the ball with, with getting better. I think that they're serious about getting better, but I think that until we see the product on the field and how it looks, I can't be so sure that they're going to be that much better than they were last year because I haven't seen it. If I see it on a more consistent basis, then I ain't gonna say I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon because I'm not doing that. It's the Cowboys at the end of the day. I'm not doing that. But what I will say is I do
I'm
like
not
what
letting
they've
you get
done.
away. I'm not letting you get away with that. That's the Falcons hater coming out of you right there. That's what that is. That's the Falcons fan that forever hates the Dallas Cowboys coming out of you right now saying part of that. And you know that.
Hey, listen, I just want to at least see them get to an NFC Championship game because every year can't be your year. Every year is your year. Even us Falcon fans know that every year ain't our year. Every year is the Cowboys' year.
I
And
don't look, I don't mean to pour rain on what you just said, but there was something that came out today, a graphic that came out and talked about all the events that Mercedes-Benz Stadium has hosted since it opened up. A Super Bowl, a World Cup, so many other things. But the one thing that they haven't hosted is a Falcons home playoff game. No, brother, we know it ain't been the Falcons year. Now we know it ain't been the Cowboys year for a long time too, but we know it ain't been the Falcons year either. Y'all honestly are in the same pits right now.
no, no, hell, we are not.
Yes,
No,
y'all
no,
are.
no, no, no. Because one is centered with delusion, and one is coming to realization. We have two quarterbacks that nobody in the building and nobody outside that building is impressed with. Because I at least can say on his worst day, Dak Prescott is a hell of a lot better quarterback than Penix and Tua Tagovailoa. So I don't. The reason why I say we're not in the same boat is because it has come to a point where the Cowboys at times look like contenders. There's not one time that I looked at the Falcons in the past 3 seasons and said, this is a contender. This looks like a team that could go and win a Super Bowl right now. Not in the last 3 to 5 years. As a matter of fact, not in any season outside of going to the Super Bowl have I said this team looks like that they can make a run for the Super Bowl. Not even the year after the Super Bowl did I say that. So I mean, if it's some delusional Falcon fans out there that's saying, yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl this year, hey, have at it. I'm not going that far. But for the Cowboys, y'all cannot keep doing this every single year. I understand about the rings, but a lot of people that are Cowboy fans gotta understand. A lot of y'all weren't alive when these rings were won. A lot of y'all don't understand what happened when Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman were winning rings. Y'all, I understand it. I understand. Everybody grew up a Cowboy fan, but
I think the
be
old
real.
school fans are more realistic. I think they understand that what they've been seeing for the most part doesn't even compare to what those Cowboys teams were. You named off Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman, and of course Emmett Smith helping rattle off the triplets, them being able to get Deion Sanders. We ain't even dove into the Darren Woodsons of the world, the Leon Letts, the Nate Newtons, those dominant offensive. We ain't even dove into that yet. And I think that old school Cowboy fans, very much like old school Laker fans, understand that things are just not the way that they used to be because we just don't have the infrastructure that we need right now. I'm going to be honest
Absolutely.
with you, though. I don't even understand how most of these new school Cowboy fans really exist with how many times that team has broken their hearts, though.
I mean, like I said, it's a real love-hate relationship, just like the Falcons. It's a real love-hate relationship that you just kind of like you hate to watch it, but you can't stop watching it. And it's like one of those. So for the Cowboys, I look at it like this. You got a lot of cards in your favor because, like I said, we talked about Dak not having enough weapons. I think that he has enough weapons this year to actually get at least win the division. I'm not gonna say anything about them going to the Super Bowl because I'm one of those people that believes until I see it, I can't believe it. That is one of those situations where I say win your division first, then we'll talk. You win your division, you outlast the Philadelphia, you outlast Washington, you outlast a much improved New York team. We'll talk. But until you win that division, I don't want to hear too much about your Super Bowl contention. I don't want to hear too much about your prize to be in the Super Bowl. You are nowhere near that right now. Focus on getting better from last year. Focus on getting into the postseason. And that is coming from a Falcons fan who ain't seen the postseason in a long time. Focus on getting baby steps first, then work your way towards your long-term goal. And that's for it. And I say that about any team, especially my own.
Cowboys fans, I just want y'all to know that I got y'all back on this. And when it's time for us to talk about the South and the NFC South, I promise y'all we gonna have some conversations about the Atlanta Falcons. And if he get out of line, I promise y'all I'm gonna get it all back straight. I promise y'all
I
this.
promise I'm not gonna say what y'all think I'm gonna say.
Well, let's talk about the New York Giants next. This is another team that has deep roots, deep history in the history of the NFL. Blue blood franchise, even though the last decade or so, most of it anyway, would not be able to help tell you that story because it's just been abysmal, man. When you think about the fact that from the moment that Tom Coughlin walked out of the door until John Harbaugh coming into the door, it's just kind of felt hopeless for the most part, KB. From the Ben McAdoo era to the Joe Judge era to we've got a franchise running back in Saquon. He can't stay healthy. We finally get a healthy season out of him. Oh, we're not going to pay him. We watch him go out the door, go to the Philadelphia Eagles, win a Super Bowl in his first year there. But I think that there is hope on the horizon finally. So the first move that we got to talk about with this team, hiring John Harbaugh away to become the head coach and honestly have some strong say-so when it comes down to front office moves that are being made too. I understand that the general manager has been able to stay there and he's in his position. But Joe Schoen, I'm telling you now, if y'all don't get it, John Harbaugh is not answering to Joe Schoen. If anything, any decision that Joe Schoen makes at this point, he is now going to go talk to John Harbaugh about it to make sure that he is okay with it. But before we dive even further into the moves that the Giants made this offseason, does it not say a lot, KB, about the allure and prestige of this franchise? The fact that they were able to lure arguably the hottest head coaching candidate on the market to come there without hesitation.
Yeah, of course. Like, you got a guy who was synonymous with one franchise being the Baltimore Ravens for pretty much his whole career. And you were able to lure him to everything that you're building up there because, like I said, a big thing that was, speculated as the reason why he chose the Giants was the fact that they had their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart. You have that up there. You have the big media frenzy that is New York. You have a lot of things going. You have the big market. You can attract free agents very easily. I think that what New York is building up there was something that John Harbaugh said, I can get with that. I can pretty much see myself being the head coach because out of all the destinations that he had to pick from, because I'm pretty sure it was a lot of people that wanted him in the building.
The other top two destinations that we know for a fact, just based off of reports, were the Atlanta Falcons and the Tennessee Titans. And I honestly wanted that to happen for the Falcons, but I understand why it didn't because they didn't come close to having a quarterback prospect in the room that probably was going to lure the attention of John Harbaugh.
Yeah, and like you said, it was kind of like a situation where John Harbaugh wanted everything that New York embodied. I think that what they were building was much more significant than what the Atlanta Falcons were building. If we're gonna be completely honest, the quarterback room was set. You got a young guy in Jackson Dart who looked at times last year like this is the guy. This is going to be a guy that I can work with. You got Cam Scatterbo coming back from injury. You have a young superstar in Malik Neighbors. You bring back veteran leadership like a Odell Beckham. Go out and sign a guy like Darnell Mooney. You have pieces on this team, and that's the crazy thing. And we're not even talking about the defense. That defensive front. Yes, you lost a Dexter Lawrence, but you still have a Brian Burns. You went out and drafted Arvell Reese. You have pieces on this team that are very, very significant. So if I'm looking at the landscape of everything that I saw before, when I'm considering my coaching search, everything that I saw was definitely worth the risk of coming to New York because we know that, Brian Daboll, I didn't feel like he was a bad head coach. I just didn't think that the situation was primed for him to be successful. I think that this is a more inducive situation for John Harbaugh to be more successful than it was for Brian Daboll to be successful. And I think that he's going to start seeing you're gonna see a different New York team that you've seen the last couple of seasons. I will say that.
Is it fair to say that Brian Daboll honestly could be one of the best offensive coordinators in the league, and that simply just might be the ceiling of where he is?
Yeah, it very well could be. And that's why I think he is a good offensive coordinator. I think he could be a great offensive coordinator. I just think that that's where I would stop it right there. Same thing with Mike McDaniel. I think great offensive coordinator. I don't know if I would love him as a coach. Just my opinion.
Hey, and listen, everybody, there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with being the best specialist at a certain position. There's nothing wrong with being the best defensive coordinator. There's nothing wrong with being the best offensive coordinator. There's nothing. Everybody cannot be a head coach. And
Go ask Eric Bieniemy. I mean, you got there's a number of guys that were great coordinators. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great coach. Everyone can't be while he hasn't had a Super Bowl win, everybody can't be successful like a Kyle Shanahan. Guys that were great offensive coordinators and then elevated to a head coaching position and were able to win as well. So it's not like what X was saying. It's not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, because it's not a bad thing, because you could be a master of your craft.
I want to add to that point too, though, because I think when people look at these positions and they look at, well, this guy was the best defensive coordinator, or this guy was the best offensive coordinator, and they just go over to another situation and it just looks totally different. Even their side of the ball, it just looks totally different. One, when you're a head coach, you are in charge of that entire operation. You're in charge of the entire team. And number two, if y'all don't realize it, this stuff goes deeper than X's and O's, man. It's all about being able to be a leader amongst men. That's what being a head coach in the NFL is all about. Can you be a leader amongst men? Can you be the right leader amongst men? And I'm not in that locker room, KB. I don't cover the New York Giants. But just from the outside looking in, did you honestly feel like for the previous 2 seasons that Brian Daboll had the respect of the guys in the locker room that's needed for an NFL team?
At times I'll say yes, but then at most times I would say no. I think that it was one of those things that was kind of up and down, but I think for the most part he didn't have the respect of the locker room. I think that it was kind of a thing where at certain points he lost the locker room. Um, I mean, like I said, it's no shame in that, because we've seen some of the best head coaches lose the locker room at certain points throughout their coaching stints. And I think that Brian Daboll is no different. I think that they are in a very unique position, because you know what it was when they had, like, they were going. I think they went through what, 3 quarterbacks last year with Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, and even Russell Wilson at one point. So it was kind of just like they were just trying to like find the footing however they could. But it was a lot of games that could have gone differently. You know what I'm saying? We saw games, especially like a game in Detroit. Jameis Winston had to step in. A very winnable game, ultimately didn't end up that way.
The game that really stands out to me is week 2 in Dallas. They should
Yeah.
have won that game. But there
Yes,
are two things that happened in that game that I honestly believe played a big factor in them not being able to do it. Wan'Dale Robinson had a huge game in that game, but Malik Neighbors still went down with injury in that game, and that ultimately ended his season. And then the number two thing that happened, Russell Wilson was having a great day. And then overtime happens, and he completely unraveled. And it wasn't too long after that that they made the decision, okay, yeah, we got to go to Jackson Dart.
and to be honest with you, Jackson Dart was the better long-term option. I think he just needed to sit behind and watch for a little bit, but I think he's a better long-term option. I think you invested your pick into Jackson Dart, and honestly, I think that pick is going to pay off in the long run. I know that they lost Wan'Dale Robinson. I know that they still have Malik Neighbors coming back from injury, but is it crazy to say that you're excited about what you're seeing them do? Like the moves that they made, the way that they drafted, is it crazy to say that you're excited about New York Giants football? Because to me, I'm excited about what they're gonna do.
I am too. And also a big offseason move they made just within the past month and a half or so that I think as long as it continues to go the way that it's going and it's moving in the direction, I think it's going to be huge for them, both on the field and off the field in terms of revenue. They brought Odell back. They brought a cash cow back. They brought a guy who, for so many who are a part of our generation or even the generation under us, we probably view him as a New York Giants icon because we didn't see Lawrence Taylor and we didn't see the best of Michael Strahan. Even though you and I, we watched Michael Strahan growing up, we didn't see Lawrence Taylor. We didn't see those guys that helped bring championships there. We didn't see that. But we saw a guy in Odell who came in and just lit the city on fire with one catch on Sunday Night Football in 2014. And the city was on fire with Odell ever since then until the moment that they traded him after the 2018 season. It's very, and honestly, man, it's beautiful to see that he and Mr. Morrow were able to patch that thing up and get that relationship back together. John Harbaugh being there plays a big role in that too, because we know Odell was a part of the Ravens for a season too. But it's nice to see that things did not end on a sour note, and hopefully they ultimately continue to move in the direction that they are. I really would love to see a happy ending with this. Is he going to be the Odell of old? No, and I'm not expecting that. But I believe that this version of Odell, who also is a Super Bowl champion as well, would have been the Super Bowl MVP if he didn't get hurt in that game, unfortunately. Or at least it looked like he was headed in that direction to be the Super Bowl MVP. Because he was having a day, KB, and then unfortunately he tore his ACL. But I think this is the more mature version of Odell, and I think he's going to be a great leader in that locker room for this young group that's coming up.
Yeah, I mean, what better person to get to mentor Malik Neighbors? I think two LSU guys, two guys that know what it's take to be in the spotlight. I think that Odell, like you said, he was on his way to possibly win Super Bowl MVP had he not got hurt because that first half he was going crazy. Like, we all saw it. But also, I think that new head coach, I think that they're going to be much improved on defense. We already said that. But I think that what they're striving for on offense is a level of consistency. Jackson Dart going into a second year, his first full year, Cam Scatterbo coming back from injury. I think that this is something that they can be very, it's going to be one of those scary teams because they got the element of surprise because to be honest with you, they also went out and got vets like Juju Smith-Schuster, who not the same player that he once was, but can still help mentor some of those young guys as well.
Yes, he can help, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Do you think that he's gonna make it past preseason with them? If we're honestly being real, because a lot of
I,
these
s-
moves ended up happening with him, Braxton Berrios, and Odell simply because of the fact that they don't know where Malik Neighbors is with his recovery, or at least they didn't at the time. I would assume that we got more information on this now. At least the organization does.
yeah, I think that they just even if it doesn't work out with these guys, like you go and get guys like Odell, Juju Smith-Schuster, Braxton Berrios, Calvin Austin, all those guys aren't gonna make the team. But I think that Odell, this was a good story. You know, his homecoming, a good story. I think Calvin Austin, he'll end up making the team as well, possibly a slot guy, but it still remains to be seen. But I think that it's one of those things where they're gonna be they're gonna make every game a dogfight, especially when you're talking about that pass rush is still gonna be one of the most formidable pass rushes in the league, let alone your division. Because you look at it like Kayvon Thibodeau still up there, Brian Burns still up there, Arvell Reese still up there. So you got guys that can get after the quarterback.
But for how long is Kayvon Thibodeau going to be there? Because remember, they could have traded him this offseason.
That I don't know. That I'm not sure about. I think that he could play himself into his very next situation if he plays well to start the season.
And that's ultimately what I think this is, because you look at them drafting Arvell Reese, you got to be thinking, okay, the writing is more than likely on the wall for Kayvon Thibodeau in New York.
Absolutely, because now his role has diminished some because he's not needed to do as much. We got a younger guy who can possibly be excel at his role more than you did at your role. Arvell Reese looks like he was for a lot of people the prize of the draft. It was Arvell Reese's name brought up that a lot of teams were rumored to want him. A lot of teams rumored to want Caleb down. So it was a lot of people that were rumored to want to go after Arvell Reese. So I think that it was one of those things that Kayvon Thibodeau could be very well auditioning for his next team, like you just said. Like it could be one of those things. And if it does end up happening, I mean, it may pay off for both teams in the very end.
But here's what I was very impressed with them, especially when you look at the moves they made in the draft. They drafted two foundational pieces at two very important positions, an edge rusher and an offensive tackle. That is what they spent picks 5 and 10 on. And the rest of the way, Colton Hood, a cornerback out of Tennessee, I like that. Malachi Fields, the wide receiver from Notre Dame. Bobby Jamison Travis, a defensive tackle from Auburn. J.C. Davis, an offensive tackle from Illinois. And Jack Kelly, a linebacker from BYU. That rounds out all of the draft picks. But those two first picks, those are foundational pieces, and they're very important for all teams to be able to have. Hopefully, they hit home runs on both of them.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm really looking forward to this season with them. Like I said, I think that Jackson Dart is going to benefit from having a guy like John Harbaugh to mentor him as well. And I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they end up bringing back Jameis, or is he still right now free agent currently?
Jameis Winston is a free agent.
I hope they bring him back. And the simply put, I think Jameis is a locker room guy, and I think that you can benefit from having a guy like him to mentor at this point.
Actually, you're going to get your wish. He actually is back with the organization.
Okay. So I'm actually glad about that because, like I said, even when Jameis was asked to come in, he actually performed pretty well, and I think that's the perfect guy to put behind you because he would be still one of the better backups in the league in case of anything that goes on with Jackson Dart.
And more
I'm
than
not missing for it.
and outside of anything on the field in terms of results that he can produce, he's going to bring great energy to the locker room. He's a fantastic morale guy for locker rooms.
Yeah. And if you see, he's one of the most liked teammates in the league. Like his teammates go to war for Jameis because that's just the type of guy he is. And I think that you can benefit from having guys like that in the locker room. So I think that they're gonna be pretty good. I think they could even be a playoff team this year. A sneaky good playoff team. Even if they sneak into that wild card, they could end up getting in because you never know.
Like we said, we'll give y'all our predictions for what we think happens with this division as we go through these final two teams. We'll give you guys those predictions at the end. The Philadelphia Eagles, man, let's talk about it. So you talked about it in part one. The biggest thing you think that they made as an addition was actually a subtraction. And I'm sure the people can guess what that is, but go ahead and just tell them.
Yeah, so you move off of like this is an addition by subtraction. You move off of Stephon Diggs and you bring in a Pro Bowler. Are you talking about? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, what they did, who they moved off of.
Oh, I'm sorry. So for Philadelphia, they moved off of AJ Brown, which was a huge distraction. We looked at that offense last year, and they just looked out of sorts. It looked like that AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts had some kind of friction that was going on that was leading to uh, a lot of bad playing on the field. I think that there was a lot to be said, and I don't know if it necessarily had anything to do with football, but it seemed like it didn't have anything to do with football. But that problem translated onto the football field to the point where neither one of them had a great season. That offense looked putrid to the point where they had to fire their offensive coordinator. They no longer have AJ Brown, who was moved to the Patriots. Um, it was. One of those things. Now, I did say that the one thing that I did like about what Philadelphia did was going out and drafting McKnight Lemon. I think that that's going to be a great pickup for them. I
We
think
crucified the Los Angeles Rams for not doing that.
you dang all right because I felt like that would have been the perfect pick for Matt Stafford towards the twilight. He's on the twilight of his career. It would have been a perfect piece to put next to him because you don't know what's going on with Puka. Devontae Adams is, he's still effective, but he's older.
He's closer to the back nine.
Yeah, exactly. So having that insurance policy would have definitely helped, pairing him up, but you went Ty Simpson. So, hey, I understand it, but I don't understand it at the same time because he was right there. Now, when it comes to Philly, oh, go ahead, X.
So I'm looking at one move in particular that they made, and you brought up a big one. I want to ask you because this is not going to be considered a big move, but we've been waiting for this guy to pop for years now. One of the wide receivers that they signed in the offseason was Elijah Moore. Do you think that he can finally get on track in Philadelphia?
Possibly because this is looking like this is the most talented quarterback he's played with. And I do think that Elijah Moore can still get it done. Like I said, it's more so that this gives him the options, like Jalen Hurts options that he needed, and there's no longer the locker room distraction that was AJ Brown because I know as much as they were tired of answering questions, I know AJ Brown was tired of answering questions. It was one of those things where it never seemed like it was coming to an end. Now that it is finally over, now you get to kind of start to see like this team can kind of get back to a semblance of normal. Like you have Devontae Smith who's stepping into a role of number one guy. Can he be that number one guy? Because we just talked about offensive coordinators moving up to head coaches now it's being a little bit different about the coverages. Now he's gonna have to see different coverages. He's gonna be asked to do a little bit more than what he was doing, so his role is gonna expand a little bit more. I'm curious. I'm
Now
curious. Can
here
he be
now
that
now
guy?
here's what I don't like for the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of offseason moves. Man, that defense got shredded. Free agency shredded that defense. N'Kobe Dean is now a Raider. Reed Blankenship is a Texan. Jalen Phillips, who they traded for last season to try to bolster things up, and he was impactful for the time that he was there. He signed with Carolina Panthers. And I know that Howie Roseman is one of the best general managers in the league, and he usually can easily replace guys. Man, it's only so many times that you can continue to replace great players, though. And they're banking on Jalen Carter having a huge season, KB. Now we're going into year 4 of this now. And we've been waiting to see, can Jalen Carter emerge as one of the consistent best defensive linemen in the game? We've seen the splashes. We've seen it plenty of times. But can splashes turn into consistency? Because if it's not able to, I think this defense going to have some problems.
You know, I'm looking to see if he can have an even better year than he had last year. Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis had an amazing year last year. I want to see if he can continue to have an amazing year going forward because with everything that's going on with Jalen Carter, I know we talked about Spitgate off the rip to start the season. Um, yeah, that defense was putrid and it was bad. It was almost as if it weren't for all the things that were going on the offensive side of the ball, you might have talked about the defense just as much because they were bad. They couldn't stop anybody. And to be honest with you, I know that the Eagles are looking to right a lot of the wrongs and get back into that Super Bowl contender because it was at times last year when we know you had offensive talent, and it was a lot of times I looked at it and said, yeah, it's only a matter of time before they're quick out because I didn't look at it. I think it was too much dysfunction going on with the team internally to move past all of that. I think that we talked about Mike Vrabel and the distraction of what happened in the offseason. I thought that the AJ Brown thing was like even more of a distraction just because it was between the leader of the team as far as the quarterback and his number one receiver. And I think that's something that you just can't get over and just be like, oh, we got enough talent to just get over it. I don't think that was that easy. I think that's the reason why it looked so bad on the field.
I do want to say this about the Philadelphia Eagles, too, before we continue with some more of the moves that they made this offseason. Head coach Nick Sirianni, that seat is warming up. It's not hot yet. It's not on fire, but it's warming up. Because we've seen this team move off of a coach that won them a Super Bowl not too long after winning the Super Bowl. So they make moves in Philadelphia. Also to the wide receiver room, though, they added Hollywood Brown and Dontavian Wicks in a trade that they made with the Green Bay Packers. But obviously, you would assume that unless it's Mekhi Lemon who completely emerges based on training camp and preseason, the number one guy in that wide receiving room is Devontae Smith. And we've been waiting for him to have this moment ever since he got drafted from Alabama.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a different role for him, but I do want to talk about those additions that they did make that were significant when we were talking about that defense. Couple moves that I like what they did. They went out as far as pass rush. They went out and signed Arnold Ebiketie from the Atlanta Falcons. For a lot of people that don't know, you got you a good one. Great player, high motor, can go after the quarterback. Also, signing a guy away from the defending Super Bowl champions and Tariq Woolen. I think that that was a very underrated signing. I think that you got a young guy who's out there. He can guard your number one. I think that that's something that you needed. You put him alongside Quinyon Mitchell, the Cooper
Yeah, I think
DeJean.
yeah, I'm with you on that. That
Yeah.
that secondary, they might end up being the best in the NFL.
Yeah, because on paper it looks like you covered every hole that you had on that secondary. You covered it. You lose a guy like Sidney Brown, but you improve it by getting a guy that is a hell of a player in Tariq Woolen. Like I said, you have Reed Blankenship, you have Cooper DeJean, you have Quinyon Mitchell. You lose C.J. Gardner Johnson, but like I said, it's addition by subtraction.
Look, no disrespect to him, but what was
I
he
I I, I
providing at this
know, I
point?
know, I know. I know, but when I look at it like this, the secondary took strides. Now with Jordan Davis, hopefully he's motivated. He got his contract. He's good now. So now you're looking for him to take that evolution to being the best nose tackle in the game. Jalen Carter, if he can rid himself from all the antics, all the distractions that go on, I still believe in his talent because I still think he's a force. You know what I'm saying? So I think that this defense right now on paper, it looks like it's much improved from what they were last year. Just to say that.
I'll say definitely for the secondary. As far as that front seven goes, I need to see it.
Yeah, because they lost Nakobe Dean as well.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like it's like a double-edged sword. You get something, but you lose something at the same time. And I look at it like Arnold Ebiketie, while he doesn't have the promise, I guess, as far as like the upside as a Nakobe Dean, he's still a great pass rusher. Put in the right system, in the right scheme, he can be a great pass rusher. So I think that, losing Jalen Phillips as well, that also is going to play a part into, sack numbers. I know that a lot of people it's a lot of topic of discussion as far as the deal that he signed, but I look at it like this. If a team is willing to go out there and give him that much money, hey, so be it. Because I did think that he was good with as far as a pass rusher, but I didn't see it enough to warrant that contract from the Panthers. I was kind of okay with them signing him because I was like, yeah, that's too much.
And when a general manager like Howie Roseman is not willing to give that type of money to the player, but another team is, it's something to pay attention to because Howie has more hits than he does misses as of recently. Carolina's got more misses recently than they do hits.
Yeah. And I'm cool with Jalen Phillips. I think that he's a great player, but I don't know if he was that great to warrant that much money. Like
You
I'm
you
good.
you cool with him for now, but when he coming after Tua or Michael Penix Jr., you ain't gonna like him very much.
I gotta see it on a more consistent level. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking because, like you said, how he wasn't willing to sign him. I don't know what the Panthers were like. I understand what they were willing to do and why they signed him. I just don't know about the number.
The number is the only reason to me they also weren't able to keep him too, because he was another player that Vic Fangio had under him in Miami under his leadership. So I thought for sure that they would have been able to keep him, but hey, man, money talks, and you're not going to tell people to turn down the money. There's only a short window that you have to make this type of money when you are in that profession. Go
That's
get
why I'm
your
not
bread.
mad. That's why I'm not mad. Hey, go get your money, dog. Because to be honest with you, great pass rushers are a premium in this league. So they're at a premium. So you're gonna have to pay that price if you wanna roll the dice and you wanna increase those team sack numbers and stuff like that. You gotta go out there and spend money. That's just what it is. And the Panthers needed to make a splash like that.
I'm gonna tell you why I also like the fit for Carolina too, and then I got one more thing about Philly before we move on to the Washington Commanders. You're putting him alongside a guy like Derek Brown. I think Derek Brown's going to help unlock something more in him, and he's going to unlock an even more beastly version of Derek Brown.
Oh yeah, one of the best young defensive tackles in the game. Yeah, I think it'll definitely help. You already are, have a great I'm not even gonna say a great secondary, but you have a great leader in the secondary in J.C. Horn. So I look at it like this: they needed that more than they needed it more than Philadelphia needed to lose them. So I think that they needed that on that defensive line more than Philadelphia needed, what I'm saying, to keep them. Because if that was the asking price, I can understand why Philly was willing to let him go. And if Jalen Phillips, I'm happy for him because, like I said, he played himself into possibly his biggest payday ever because we know that the defensive linemen, especially edge rushers, they have a short window, and some can extend it longer than other people, but for a short amount of time, like you can be in a 1 to 3 year period where you're a great pass rusher, and then outside of that, you have a fall off, or you're just a consistently average player. So we know
It's very rare that you get a Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, Warren Sapp, Michael Strahan. It's very
JJ.
rare that you end up with those. Yeah, JJ.
Yeah, I mean because it doesn't happen like that. Like you would think that with it being a more passing league now that the opportunities for to get sacks are easier. Yes, but as far as generational pass rushers or you talking about above average pass rushers, it's not that many.
They're a dime a dozen. That's why
Yeah,
it's very few of them. That's why you only really have conversations about Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, Warren Sapp, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett when it really comes down to that. Even though I just said his name, Michael Strahan, I think most people would consider him a second tier guy compared to those first five guys I just rattled off. And that's no
which is
disrespect, but it's
insane.
just levels to this. Oh, there is another guy I got to put in that first tier class, and it should have been the first name off my out of my mouth, Bruce Smith.
Yeah, yeah. So it just goes to show you that, to be a consistent great when it comes to rushing the quarterback, it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it's like you said, it's levels to it because we are. It's only a certain amount of guys that are synonymous with actually being great over a sustained period of time.
I think we can provide the perfect example to that, to what you just said. John Abraham. I look at him in that type of fashion. Good 3, 4, maybe 5 year window where you were absolutely elite. And then
Hmm.
other years where it was like, you were good, but you weren't necessarily elite.
And then you have the guys that were a one-off, like Vic Beasley had one great year, and then the cliff.
And I take that one great year with a grain of salt because a lot of those sacks came in just spurts of games where he was just getting like collections of sacks. They weren't like consistently happening game after game after game. So I take that one year with a
Not
grain of
like a
salt.
Miles Garrett or
No,
anybody like that. It was way different, and you had to kind of watch it to see that because that I think that what happened after that season was more of who he really was than more of that. You know what I'm saying? I think that was who he really was in itself. Like because you don't fall off to the point where you're out of the league a few seasons later from having the league being the league leader in sacks to being out of the league. You don't have that type of situation happen unless that's really who you were.
and that happened within a 2 to 3 year span, y'all. Just so that you
Exactly.
understand that.
Exactly. All my Falcon fans out there, y'all know what we saw. It was special in that 2016, 2017 season, but we also saw what came after that. It
Well,
wasn't
Tack
good.
McKinley was supposed to come in there and help him out, but we all know how that went.
Yeah, because we could have had TJ. We definitely could have had TJ Watt. So yeah, it just goes to show you that they're a dime a dozen. Sometimes you get lucky with a draft pick and you draft the next great JJ or TJ Watt or but more times than not, they're not the easiest people to find. You get guys that are like great young pass rushers like a Brian Burns who looks like he's elite at just rushing the passer, but it's not that easy to find the next great pass rusher.
Final question I got for the Philadelphia Eagles, and then we got to move on. Do you think Saquon can get anywhere close back to the level that he was in 2024 and 2026?
No, I'm gonna be honest with you. That season was so special. The amount of opportunities that he had, because you got to think about it. He was on another level, but that offense was just clicking. It was clicking on a different level. And I don't see them returning to form like that. That was a very special year. And so I'm gonna say no, for the simple fact that that offense don't look the same. So the opportunities aren't gonna be the same.
And most of it too, that I don't know if you agree with this, but in my eyes, because I agree with what you said, but in my eyes, the reason that went like that, that offensive line didn't look the same in 2025 as they looked in 2024.
Exactly. So when you talk about everything in totality, that is the reason why I can say, like, in my opinion, I don't feel as comfortable with saying that can he return to that offensive player of the year that he once was, MVP candidate that he once was, because it would take a lot of things to go right and few things to go wrong for that to happen. Because I think that with him, he was like, you remember, it was to the point where people knew he was getting the ball and they still couldn't stop it. That lets you know that a running back running for that many yards to the point where he's able, where he's like close enough to where if had he not sat in that game, he was going to more likely break the record. That is a product of not just him, but also that offensive line. And things changed, so I don't see it. I don't see that same opportunity happening for him anymore.
Well, now we got to talk about the final team in this division. They took everybody by storm in 2024, especially when you talk about the postseason run they went on, and then they tremendously fell off of a cliff in 2025, mostly because of the injuries to their quarterback. But it was enough of a cliff fall that I would say that their head coach, his seat definitely is warm as we come into this season. And that would be the Washington Commanders, led by head coach Dan Quinn, quarterback Jaden Daniels. It was not a good year last year in Washington, KB. We already know that. But do you think Dan Quinn's seat is as warm or as hot as I'm making it out to be right now?
It's warm, but it's not as hot as it needs to be, just because you got to think about it. You get a little bit of grace because of the injuries that happened to Jaden Daniels. We know how electrifying he is on the field when he's out there. So he gets a little bit of grace. Now, I'm looking at that defense because that defense did let me down a lot last year. So I want to say, like, he's going to get some grace because they're going to give him another year. But it is a possibility that Dan Quinn doesn't make it through this year either. He's another one of those coaches that if things start going off the rails very early and very fast, he may not survive this one and he may not make it through the end of this year.
So let's talk about the big defensive splash that they made this offseason, shall we? Odafe Owe from the Los Angeles Chargers, a good pass rusher. I'm not one who tries to count somebody else's pockets, but he got a 4-year deal for $100 million. And if I'm just looking at production, KB, his career high in sacks happened in 2024, 10. That number went down to 7.5 sacks in 2025. I'm missing something here. Guys who put up those type of numbers are not usually guys that are getting a 4-year, $100 million contract. Now, he spent that season in 2024 with the Baltimore Ravens, and then he was traded during the season last year to the Los Angeles Chargers before signing a 4-year deal with the Washington Commanders this offseason. Look, we wish him well. We want him to prosper. But based off of that, I don't know if that's the type of money that he should have been getting.
Hey, that just goes back to what I told people a lot. Desperate teams are going to make desperate moves. And I think that was a desperate move, because not because of the player, I think it was because of the productivity that he has. Like, you're talking about the output didn't warrant that money. Now, I ain't hating, I ain't pocket watching, but I'm just saying the output didn't warrant what he got. And then you look at it like this is a team that desperately needs that pass rusher. They need that, premier pass rusher out there. So they feel the need, but it just seemed like they broke the bank to try to go get that pass rusher that they desperately needed. Now they made some other moves, of course. We haven't talked about like Leo Chanel that they were able to get. They able to get Meek Robertson from the Lions, and these are all good complementary pieces. But I think that the most significant thing was getting Jaden Daniels back at the helm because we saw what type of team they were without him. They didn't stand a chance with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. I
Now
think they
they also have a new offensive coordinator too, though.
Oh, yes, yes, they do. I think that, listen, I'm gonna be honest, they're still a good ways away because we don't know exactly what Jaden Daniels is gonna come back and look like. We don't. Um,
I'm hoping that he's going to have a more muscular frame. And I say that because if he comes out there looking with the frame that he had last season, he's not going to last.
or at least hope that they change his play style. He can't take the hits that he continued to take because we saw what it's already done to Lamar Jackson. We seen what it did to Cam Newton. Running quarterbacks don't last too long because of the type of hits that add up over the years. And he had such a gruesome injury last year to the point where it was hard to watch. So I'm hoping, luckily the only saving grace that happened was he's a young guy when it happened. So healing was not like the worst thing in the world, but it was just the fact that he can't continue to play like this. Those He has to slide, he has to get out of bounds, he has to avoid those hits at all costs because taking those hits in the regular season is almost guaranteed to ensure that you're not going to make it to the postseason. I think that he's too good of a player for y'all to mortgage his future playing the way that he has to play because the read options and stuff, it's nice to have the option for him to run. But I would like to see him more as an exclusive pocket passer and run only when necessary. But when he runs, I need him to be able to get out of bounds or slide, throw the ball away, something. But he cannot continue to play the same way.
I'm gonna tell you what Washington didn't do do this offseason that I think does hurt them coming into 2026 though. They did not really do a lot to improve what was already a struggling offensive line. And that's part of helping keep Jaden Daniels upright and for him to become that effective passing quarterback that you're talking about on a more consistent basis. Here's how they spent their draft. Sonny Styles in the first round with the seventh overall pick. And I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of got my questions about that because to me, Sonny Styles could have been a 1 year wonder at Ohio State. I'm not disrespecting him by saying that. I'm just simply saying prior to 2025, you did not hear Sonny Styles' name a lot when it came down to Ohio State. Now, did you?
No, you really didn't hear his name. Like it was kind of one of those picks where I was like, hopefully it works out. But like you said, we see 1 year wonders all the time when we hear guys' names that just pop up in the draft right before the draft. So yeah, I
I'm going to
wouldn't.
give you a comparison of what this pick reminds me of. We literally just watched this weeks ago. The Sonny Styles pick to me, it could work or it could end up being a reach, just like Keaton Vogler could end up working or being a reach like he was for the Los Angeles Clippers. If you're watching what's happening in Summer League right now, it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be great, at least to start things off. But both of these guys are young. We'll see what ends up happening. Here's more picks for you. Antonio Williams, the wide receiver from Clemson. Joshua Josephs, an edge rusher from Tennessee. Katron Allen, a running back from Penn State. Matt Gublin, a center from Michigan State. This was a 6th round pick. And they drafted a quarterback in the 7th round out of Rutgers, Ethan Kalikmanis. Hopefully, I just said his name correctly. If I did not, please forgive me. There's a lot to sound out right there. But the biggest positions of need, honestly, to me, when I look at Washington, it's the offensive line, KB. And are we trying to wait for 2027 to see what ends up happening there? Maybe there are some guys who will emerge out of camp. We don't know. But based off of what we saw last season, it doesn't look great.
Yeah, I mean, if you're relying on somebody to emerge out of camp, that's really not the optimism that I'm looking at. Like I said, I just hope that Jaden Daniels is not running for his life back there because his evolution needs to be taking more like drop back passes, staying in the pocket, taking less hits. But if he's going to be running for his life, then it's no different than him running outside the pocket on design quarterback runs.
Now they did make one move that I will give them credit for, and this was a great one, or at least it should be, acquiring Laramie Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in the league. So that's something that will help, but you need more than just a great left tackle to have one of the consistently good offensive lines in the league.
Yeah, I mean, definitely helps, but like you said, you need more, and you didn't do enough to address that. So for me, like the outlook for them doesn't it looks a little bit more grim than the other three teams in the division. I felt like they improved the least amount. I felt like that this is one of those situations where Dan Quinn, if I got to be honest with you, bro, I could see 6 wins for them, but I could see Dan Quinn also being gone before the end of the season if things go start out very rough. I really could see it because the seat was already warm, and I felt like they were giving him some kind of grace because of the fact that Jaden Daniels was out, and they were giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I don't see him making it to the end of the season.
So honestly, I believe that what you're saying is that his seat is high. You're saying it's a little warm. I honestly believe what you're saying is that it's high.
No, no, I saying warm. It was warm going into the end of last season just because he didn't have a Jaden Daniels to like rely on. I think it will be hot by the time like we get to about the middle of the season, just because of the fact I don't foresee them having the success that, especially the other team. I feel that like I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I feel like they're going to finish fourth in the division. That's just me though, because I felt like they improved the least amount.
I also have a question mark about something else too. As much praise as we gave Jaden Daniels, I'm questioning honestly, what is he? I saw what he was in 2024, but when he was on the field in 2025, there was a good stretch of time. I'm like, defenses, they're catching up with him here a little bit. Not being able to catch up with him when he uses his legs per se, but with his own. Now, part of that too is the wide receiving room that he had to work with. Terry McLaurin was injured last year and he looked older. Debo Samuel looks completely older. So they did some revamping there. We'll see what happens. They also added Rashad White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's on a 1 year deal. They got a pretty stacked running back room. And I don't mean stacked in terms of talent per se. I just mean they got a lot of running backs in that locker room right now. We'll see if they're able to keep all of those guys coming out of training camp and the preseason. But David Bluff is the new offensive coordinator. I remember hearing that name when he was a quarterback. What do you think he's going to bring to the table that's going to help Jaden Daniels improve even more and get closer to that 2024 form that we saw?
Decision making more so than anything. I think that's the most important thing for him. His decision making just got to be better because, like you said, even before the injury at time, he just didn't look great. And we know what he was in 2024, taking his team all the way to the NFC Championship game. So it's like, I think that he can help him just be a better decision maker, learning to win, like learning that, all plays aren't going to work out. Sometimes you got to just take your loss. Sometimes you got to you got to slide down. Sometimes you got to get rid of the ball early. Take the check down. I think that that's something that can help improve his game because it can, extend his longevity a little bit. Because, like I said, we don't want him to be one of those quarterbacks that ends up having a shorter career because of the fact that he's taking so many hits. And I think that that's something that he can take advice from, even if it's just from his OC. Like take what the defense is giving you and live with it. That's the most important advice that I feel like anybody could give him, let alone his offensive coordinator. Sometimes you're gonna keep your eyes downfield, but this ain't college, bro. You got linemen running 4.4s, like they can go get you. And when those hits add up at the end of the season, and you're no longer out there for us, then you're shortening your own career. So if anything, I would say that would be the best thing that he could do for his game is help him improve his decision making when it comes to just being a quarterback, and hopefully that adjusts his play style as well.
All right, so it's decision time. Time to pick our winners for the NFC East Division. I went first with the AFC East. So, KB, you go ahead and you take it away with the NFC East.
Yeah, I'm gonna go say for the NFC East, I'm gonna pick Philly to win the NFC East. I have in a surprise, I'm gonna say that New York is gonna come second place. I like what New York is doing, and New York and Dallas are gonna be jockeying for that second, third place spot, but I really do like all the improvements that New York made. Um, and Dallas, like I said, if they could very well surprise me and they could very well be second place, but I'm gonna still pick Philly to win. I think the distraction of having, AJ Brown out of the building, new OC, I think that, you know. It's a lot to prove. It's a prove year for a lot of things going on in Philadelphia. So I think that they got a lot to kind of work on, but I think they got a lot to go out there and prove. And then, unfortunately, I think Washington finishes last in the division.
Philly's not a bad pick, but I'm going with the New York Giants. I think the Giants are going to win this division. John Harbaugh is a culture-changing type of coach. And I remember when he got to the Baltimore Ravens and how he got that thing flipped and turned around immediately. And yes, he still had his leaders like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed in that locker room. Joe Flacco was just a rookie, whatever case may be. This is a man that knows how to win. And he's been given flack because he hasn't won a Super Bowl since the 2012 season. It's been a long time. I understand that. He's going to come into this thing with a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to have Jackson Dart looking more consistently like an NFL quarterback. Malik Neighbors, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he comes back healthy. A lot of this banks on if Malik Neighbors is healthy, because if he's not, it's a shaky wide receiver room. Cam Scatterboo, can he build off of what he was building on in 2025? But defensively, I think that defensive line is going to wreak havoc and hell this upcoming season like we thought they were going to wreak last season. Second place, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. Just narrowing Dallas at number 3. I think all 3 of those teams can actually make the playoffs. And I think they actually will make the playoffs. I'm with you at 4th place with Washington. I think that situation is, I don't want to say in turmoil or tumultuous, but they do not have their long-term option at head coach in the building. And that's no disrespect to Dan Quinn. This goes back to what we've been saying. It's nothing wrong with being a great specialist and being the absolute best specialist at something. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in football. And maybe that's simply what he is. Because yes, he took the Falcons to a Super Bowl, but they had the biggest collapse in a Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. Yes, in his first year, he took Washington to the NFC Championship. That Philadelphia coaching staff coached circles around them in that NFC Championship. And also the element of surprise, it's not there anymore. Notice, and this actually was a trend that happened in Atlanta too, and I know you followed it. Notice after the 2016 season, it was like the element of surprise of what Dan Quinn is as a head coach is out of the building. And I think that's mostly because he surrounds himself with great offensive coordinators. When Kyle Shanahan left, man, that Band-Aid came completely off. Now, Cliff Kingsbury, things kind of unraveled there last year. We'll see what David Bluff's able to bring to the table. But ultimately, I think they finish in 4th place just like you do. And I think they'll have a new head coach going into 2027.
Yeah, I second that. Like I said, they come in 4th place. I still feel like that this is one of those things where Dan Quinn doesn't make it out the end of the season. If he does, he doesn't make it past Black Monday. So I'm unfortunately this is gonna be the last season of him in Washington.
Unless for some reason they are able to be a competitive 7-10, 8-9, 9-8 team, or even get back into the playoffs. This very well could be incorrect of everything we're saying right now. We're simply just giving you our predictions.
Yeah, very true. Like they could surprise the whole world and make the playoffs. Because if they end up winning this division, I think that Dan Quinn actually stays as the head coach.
Because nobody saw them coming in 2024. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, and then that'll wrap this up. I was there for their first game in 2024 when they came to Tampa, and they didn't look anywhere close to it. And then I was there for the wild card game when Tampa didn't look anywhere close to them. So It's a season of ebbs and flows. It's a short season, even though it's just 17 games, but it's a season of ebbs and flows, and it's really a week to week type of game. Also, how injured are other teams going to be? That stuff plays a factor in all of this stuff too. But if we're just going simply based off of what we see right now, especially on paper, they don't look like they come close to what the Eagles have, what the Giants are building, and what the Cowboys could be, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I just, I want to see because that would be one of the greatest stories to see, like especially coming out of NFC East for them to be able to make the playoff because I feel like that everybody would gotten better in their division. Still a few question marks here and there, but I would think that if Jaden Daniels is able to will this team to the playoffs, Dan Quinn survives another year, and then you get to the fun parts of the season because, like I said. I think that the reason why I still say that the Eagles are number one in that division, I still feel like that the talent on that offensive side of the ball is still very good. And then I felt like that they made enough of an addition with Tariq Woolen, a significant enough addition on the defensive secondary to actually warrant picking them over the Giants. But I'm glad that you picked it. We basically flip-flop one and two because we see all the improvements that the Giants made. So, hey, I'm not mad at that because, like I said, I see it. I see it.
I want to add one more note to this though, because we've been talking about guys that have to have a prove it year. This is going to be an unpopular thing I'm about to say to a lot of people, but this is a prove it year for Jalen Hurts too.
Oh yeah, that to me is not unpopular at all because we've seen you be an NFL MVP candidate. Now it's kind of like, okay, I understand because a lot of people are going to sympathize with him and say, all right, I see why you had such a terrible season. You had to deal with all of the stress of dealing with the drama that surrounded supposedly your friend, but also your number one receiver in AJ Brown. Now you don't have that distraction anymore. Now you can kind of like play football again. Can you return back to form, or was that just the start of what we are going to have to get used to with you? I think that you have a new offensive coordinator, and this is yet another offensive coordinator that he's going to have to adapt to and learn a new system. So, but you don't have the distraction. And I think that he would much rather have a new OC than have the distraction of having that loom over his head, for a whole season and having to be asked about it every single week.
But unfortunately for him, the gloves are off. And I know folks are going to listen at this and say, what do you mean he won a Super Bowl? This is Philadelphia with Howie Roseman as the general manager. It is different there. If he sees something that he doesn't like, he will get Jalen's replacement in the building and might even keep Jalen for a whole nother season before they move on to the replacement. This is basically how Jalen Hurts got the job in Philadelphia anyway. They had Carson Wentz there, and they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. He came in, and they weren't seeing what they wanted to see from Carson Wentz. And they put Jalen Hurts in there. They liked what they saw, and they moved on from Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I think that also, I remember all of the conversation that happened after he won that Super Bowl. Was he a real top 10 quarterback? This could be his year to actually prove why he is a top 10 quarterback in this league. I think that he knows that he's up against it because he has all the doubters in his ear telling him that, you know, you're not that guy. You're not who they think you are. He can really shut a lot of people up because he doesn't have that luxury of having an AJ Brown out there anymore. Even though AJ Brown at times looked like he wasn't the AJ Brown that we knew he was in Tennessee, but he doesn't have that luxury. You still have a Saquon Barkley back there, so it's still, you still have weapons. You still have Dallas Goedert. You still have weapons out there that can help, get you to where you're trying to be. Which we know with Philadelphia, they still have championship aspirations. They still see themselves as Super Bowl contenders. And I mean, it's very safe to say that they could very well be a sneaky team to make a Super Bowl. But like I said, it's kind of like We got to see it. We got to see it with this new OC. We got to see exactly what Jalen Hurts is going to look like because I don't feel like this offense is as good as they were when Saquon was breaking records and that offense was humming. The year they won the Super Bowl, I don't think that they're as good as that team was, but I feel like that they can, strive to be somewhere like somewhere at least top 12 as far as an offense goes, top 10 to 12 offense.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. We went really long in this portion of it, but hey, this division is going to be one of those ones. Telling y'all that now. But for KB, I'm X, and we're saying peace. We'll see y'all next time.
Peace.